What if I told you the Vietnam War wasn't really about stopping communism? What if the real story was about money, massive, staggering amounts of money, and the people who made billions while 58,000 Americans died in the jungle? This is the financial story behind Vietnam that your history class never taught you. A story about how war became the most profitable business in America and how that changed everything. By the end of this video, you'll understand who really won the Vietnam War. Spoiler alert, it wasn't America, and it definitely wasn't Vietnam. Let's go back to 1945. World War II just ended, and America's facing an unusual problem: peace. During the war, defense contractors like Boeing, Lockheed, and General Dynamics had expanded massively. They built enormous factories, hired hundreds of thousands of workers, and created entire supply chains. But now the war was over, and these companies were staring at financial disaster. If America stayed peaceful, those factories would close, workers would lose jobs, and shareholders would panic. President Eisenhower saw this clearly. In his 1961 farewell address, he warned about the military-industrial complex, a network of defense contractors, military leaders, and politicians who all had a vested interest in keeping America at war. But by then, we were already getting pulled into Vietnam, and the money was already flowing. Here's the scale we're talking about. The Vietnam War cost $168 billion in 1960s money. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $1 trillion today, more than the entire GDP of most countries. And when you factor in the interest on war debt, lifetime health care for wounded veterans, and lost economic opportunities, some economists estimate the total cost reaches $3 trillion. $3 trillion. Now let me show you where that money actually went. When President Johnson escalated the war in 1965, defense stocks exploded. Companies making helicopters, fighter jets, and weapons saw their share prices double or triple within months. Take Bell Helicopter. Before Vietnam, they were struggling with about 3,000 employees. Then came the war. The military needed helicopters for everything: transport, medical evacuation, attack missions. Bell couldn't build them fast enough. That iconic Huey helicopter you see in every Vietnam movie? Bell made over 16,000 of them. Each cost the government $250,000. That's $4 billion just for Hueys. The company's stock price increased 400% during the war. Shareholders who bought in 1964 became millionaires. Company executives received bonuses larger than most Americans' annual salaries. And Bell wasn't unique. This was happening everywhere. Boeing made B-52 bombers at $3 million each. The Air Force ordered over 700. But here's where Boeing really made their money: maintenance and spare parts. They had exclusive contracts and charged whatever they wanted. An Air Force officer later testified that Boeing charged $18,000 for a part that an independent shop could make for $300. That's a 60 times markup. Boeing's military revenue went from $500 million in 1964 to over $3 billion by 1968. McDonnell Douglas produced F-4 Phantom fighter jets, over 5,000 of them at $2 million each. But the F-4 had problems. It was rushed into production, and early versions had serious issues. Engines failed, weapon systems malfunctioned, pilots complained the planes were dangerous. Did McDonnell Douglas fix these for free? No. They charged hundreds of millions for upgrades. They literally made money off their own mistakes. Lockheed had classified programs like the U-2 spy plane and State Route 71 Blackbird. Because these were secret, there was almost no oversight. One investigator estimated Lockheed's profit margins on classified programs exceeded 60%. Most manufacturing companies consider 10% good. But it gets darker. These companies realized something crucial. The longer the war lasted, the more money they'd make. Not just from new equipment, but from replacement parts and maintenance. When you drop a bomb, it's gone. You need another. When a helicopter gets shot down, you need a replacement. This created perpetual demand that never ended as long as the war continued. The weapons manufacturers had found a money-printing machine, and that machine ran on war.
How did they keep it going? Through one of the most sophisticated lobbying operations ever built. Defense contractors employed hundreds of lobbyists in Washington, former generals, former Pentagon officials, former congressmen, people with relationships and credibility. Their job keep defense spending high. But here's their real genius. They spread their operations across as many congressional districts as possible. They manufacture wings in California, engines in Connecticut, avionics in Texas, and assemble in Georgia. That way they had leverage over congressmen from all those states. When a defense spending bill came up for a vote, the company would remind each congressman that voting against it might cost jobs in their district. No congressman wants to be responsible for layoffs, so they voted yes every time, even if they had doubts about the war. Defense spending bills passed Congress with huge majorities year after year, even as the war became increasingly unpopular with the American public. The lobbying worked perfectly, and it wasn't just manufacturing. Companies like Pacific Architects and Engineers provided base maintenance and support services in Vietnam. They went from a few hundred employees in 1962 to over 20,000 by 1968. Their revenue jumped from a few million to over $200 million in 6 years. One journalist got access to their contracts and found they were charging $12 for a light bulb that cost 30 cents in stores, $40 for a ceiling fan that cost $12 retail. They used cost-plus contracts, meaning the more they spent, the more profit they made. So they had every incentive to inflate costs. And they did. But the money story goes even deeper than contractor profits. Let's talk about Agent Orange. The military sprayed over 20 million gallons of this herbicide across Vietnam. The main suppliers were Monsanto and Dow Chemical. The government paid them about $1 per gallon, $20 million total. Doesn't sound like much, right? But Agent Orange contained dioxin, one of the most toxic substances known to science. The chemical companies knew it was dangerous. Internal documents proved it, but they never told the military or the soldiers handling it. Millions were exposed, American soldiers and Vietnamese civilians. The Department of Veterans Affairs has spent over $50 billion on disability payments for exposed American veterans. $50 billion. The companies made $20 million and stuck taxpayers with a $50 billion bill. That's a 2,500-to-1 ratio. And what about Vietnamese victims? The Vietnamese government estimates over 3 million people suffered health problems from Agent Orange. America has provided maybe a few hundred million in assistance total. Vietnamese families still deal with birth defects from exposure that happened decades ago. The chemical companies never paid anything for the Vietnamese victims. Then there's the economic damage to America itself. The massive war spending without raising taxes caused inflation that ravaged the American economy in the 1970s. A gallon of milk that cost $1 in 1965 cost $2 by 1975. Workers' wages didn't keep up. The middle class got poorer in real terms. The war spending even forced Nixon to end the gold standard in 1971 because America had printed so many dollars to fund Vietnam that there wasn't enough gold to back them. This fundamentally changed the global financial system. Meanwhile, all those billions going to defense meant less investment in civilian manufacturing. While America spent on bombs and jets, Japan and Germany invested in building better cars and electronics. By the 1980s, American manufacturing was in serious decline, partly because the best engineers and investment capital had gone to defense for 2 decades. After the war ended in 1975, you might think defense spending would drop. It didn't. The defense industry lobbied hard, arguing America needed to stay strong against the Soviet Union. Military spending stayed high, then exploded again under Reagan in the 1980s. The same companies that profited from Vietnam are still profiting today, just bigger now. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. They've consolidated and grown more powerful through mergers. America currently spends over $800 billion annually on its military, more than the next 10 countries combined. And the patterns from Vietnam keep repeating. Afghanistan and Iraq cost over $2 trillion with the same contractor profits, cost overruns, and lack of accountability. Here's the lesson your history teacher never taught you. The Vietnam War wasn't just a tragic mistake or a failed strategy. It was a business model, a $1 trillion transfer of wealth from taxpayers to defense contractors, from the many to the few. 58,000 Americans died. 3 million Vietnamese died. Millions more were wounded or traumatized, and a small group of executives and shareholders became enormously wealthy. Until we confront this reality and change the system that makes war profitable for the wrong people, we're doomed to repeat it. Because right now, somewhere, someone is looking at a map and seeing not a country, not people, but a profit opportunity. That's the financial story behind Vietnam. That's what they didn't teach you in school. The question is, now that you know, what are you going to do about it?